Hi everyone, we're here in the OTCM workshop and this is the first video in a series in which we'll be looking at the construction of my new exhibition layout. This is going to be something fairly hefty. It's going to be about 20 foot by 10 foot and it's designed purely for taking out on the exhibition circuit as and when that gets restarted following COVID. I think one of the most important things when it comes to constructing a layout, particularly if you want it to be believable, is to have a really strong sense of place. To that end, I know exactly when this layout's going to be set. It'll be the winter of 1973, so January, February 1973. It'll be set in South Yorkshire. I have an exact place in mind. I know exactly what traffic will be that runs along the branch line. That allows me to focus stock building on making sure I do that. And I'll also be making sure that all the locos are locos that would reasonably be expected to be in that place. Having that exact timescale will give me plenty of options around prototype detailing. I know exactly how the track should be built. I know how the line side structure should look. I know how all the other details should look. Before we go too far though, I'm going to take a quick step back, look at my previous exhibition layout, a layout called Bottomwork Sidings, which was a smaller brother of this. It's going to be a very similar representation. So we'll take a quick look at that, look at some of the positives, look at some of the negatives, some of the lessons we can learn from it, and then we'll start looking at this in more detail. Bottomwork Sidings was built as an entry to the Model Railway Journal Cameo Layout competition, which was held in around about 2018. It featured a small set of exchange sidings between an electrified branch off the Woodhead Route and British Steel, and it was imagined to serve a coking plant. Traffic on the layout consisted of a mixture of metals and coke traffic. And their layout portrayed a cold winter's morning with the leftovers of snowfall on the ground, dead grass and all the other things you'd associate with a cold winter's day. This is exactly what I'm looking to portray again on the new layout. I want to go for the exact same scene, the exact same area and the exact same setup, as it seemed to be popular with exhibition visitors when we took it out and about. I'll also be looking to use all the same rolling stock, as I'm really happy with the way it looks and the standard it's built to. Although the layout's small size was ultimately the reason I decided to build a new layout, because it was a bit of a compromise, I did enjoy the opportunity to incorporate lots of fine detail into the scene and scratch build structures that would be typical of the area and the industries in use. This is something I want to carry out on a much bigger scale on the new layout and treat it almost as if it's a small layout in itself. One of the other things I wasn't particularly keen on was that you could always see the unsightly holes in the back scene where trains ran through. This is something where I'll make a lot more effort to try and hide these on the new layout. I also really like the style of presentation I used, the cameo style of presentation, whereby you have a small viewing window with a fixed lighting gantry and a high back scene behind that, and you force people to look into the scene rather than looking over it. I think this helps with the overall sense of place because, of course, when you look at a real railway, you look at it from eye level and not from a helicopter. So this is something I'm going to be continuing as well, but obviously with a much longer viewing window than was the case on this, which was only 4 foot long. So there we have it, that was Bottomwork Sidings. This new layout I haven't exactly decided on a name for yet. I have some ideas in my head, but I haven't christened it anything, so we'll come to that at some point in the future once we get that confirmed. As you can see, I've already got the baseboards built. Did this several months ago. I'm going to look at that in the next video, but before we go there, let's have a look at where this layout is set. We'll look at some maps to show it exactly, and then we'll take a look at some of the traffic flows we expect along the branch. Despite British Railways having taken a number of measures in the mid to late 1960s to try and integrate the railways of South Yorkshire, even in the early 70s, much of the network was still operated on the lines of the historic pre-grouping companies. My interest is in the ex-Great Central Railway lines, particularly those north of Sheffield. The Great Central Railway system, as can be seen from the high-quality OTCM map on the screen now, spread from Manchester in the west via Woodhead Tunnel to Penistone, and then via Sheffield and out to the east to Doncaster, Retford, and to the south to London. While the operational centre from a passenger perspective was undoubtedly Sheffield Victoria, Freight services were concentrated on Wath Yard, which was on the direct line between Doncaster and Barnsley. Until the 1980s, Wath Yard was right at the centre of South Yorkshire's coal industry. Trains would be worked in from local collieries, be rearranged within the yard, and then work out either to the east for export via ship from the docks at Immingham or from Doncaster, or they'd head to the west and head over the Woodhead Route and over to the industries of Manchester. It was this route out to the west via Penistone which was famous in steam days for the Worsborough incline, a gradient of approximately 1 in 40, over which loaded coal trains had to climb, usually using up to 4 large tender locos to do so. The plan is that this layout will be set between Mexborough and Barnsley. This was once a 4-track railway running through the Derna Valley. Looking at this in reality using the excellent resource available from the National Library of Scotland and using the old OS maps, we can see coming in from the right hand side of the screen the Great Central Line from Doncaster, while coming in from the south is the line from Sheffield. To the north is the line to York, heading off at the top of the screen here, and we've got the ginormous Manvers Main coking and colliery taking up the middle of the screen. We then go past Wath Yard, and there's a single line heading off to the left. This is the Elsicar branch, which used to serve as a couple of collieries. We'll come back to that later. As we continue up, we go past what was Alden Junction. The line then splits with the line to Barnsley heading off the top of the map, while we go around to Woodwell Junction, where the line splits to head west towards Penistone, and the line off to Sheffield heads south. So now it's time to have a think about what trains would be running across the layout. Here's another high quality drawing that I've put together using AppleDraw, and I've highlighted in the green box the area portrayed by the layout. To the right is the main line to Mexborough, to the left is the main line to Barnsley, and we've got Wath Yard right in the middle. I've envisaged that because of the large steelworks built here and creating extra traffic, a new chord was built between the Barnsley direction and straight onto the Elsicar branch, and you can see this at the triangle at the top of the screen. So if we have a quick look at the baseboards, which are already constructed, just to show the track plan, I've laid some bits of track out just roughly to show where the main lines will sit. So at the left-hand end, it's imagined that the junctions going to the steelworks off the rest of the Elsicar branch is just off seen to the left. I see that the track will go out under a road bridge here. And we have a double track main line, which is the Elsicar branch, which runs in from that direction. And at a slightly lower level to the rear, you see the track beds are there for 3 sidings. So these will be the exchange sidings where electric and diesel traction are changed. So looking the other way towards the centre of the layout, we've got the 2 main lines still running along the front. 3 sidings at the rear climb up a slight gradient to reach the same height as the sidings. And you'll see there's going to be a crossover in the foreground between the up and down main lines. It's a trailing crossover, which I'll be building at a later point. As we move further up past that crossover, the line coming in at the rear will be the industrial line, part of the steelworks network, and you can see that there's a piece of wood in place which will take a point and run through onto the steelworks system. So this would be a sort of back entrance to the steelworks, if you like. Where the sidings have come out, there will be a 3-way point which accesses the steelworks network and comes out onto the main line, and then there will be a head shunt siding carrying on, so the track main formation will be 3 tracks wide heading towards the right hand end of the layout. So looking at the right hand end of the layout, you can see we've got the 2 main lines again. In this section here at the back will be a 3rd line, that'll be the head shunt, which will just run up to a buffer stop, and then we'll have the access to the steelworks running in this direction, and the steelworks own internal line coming out of the steelworks going that way. And then those 2 will join together and run off at the right hand end as well, slightly behind the main lines. From a scenery perspective, I see most of the layout being fairly nondescript and quite bleak in nature. At the rear of the sidings there will be a small stream running along, which will then go into a culvert, run under the main lines and re-emerge at the front, and then the main lines will run along on an embankment at the front and rear. Which should be something nicely different. Not high enough to go over a road, but they might cross over a culvert or a low bridge. And then the ground height will start rising again towards the right hand end and go into a slight cutting at that end. While not of the best quality, this bit of video taken from a brake van trip around Scunthorpe Steelworks, which by the way are absolutely excellent and well worth doing, does give a really good impression of the kind of scenery I'm looking to put around the layout. Instead of lush grass, we've got general weeds and poor quality grass because the land quality is not great, obviously being an industrial site. And we've got 1960s style concrete structures, in this case the overbridges. I really like these, and they provide something a bit different to what you normally see on a layout. It's probably fair to say that, as with all industrial locations, there'll also be a need for some junk around, although probably not as much as is seen here. However, definitely a few bits of scrap metal lying around the place would not go amiss. I think that gives a pretty good summary of everything that I'm looking to achieve with this layout, what I want it to look like, where it's going to be set, etc, etc. Certainly it gives me a good reason to run a variety of different locos and plenty of coal trains, plenty of steel trains and plenty of iron ore trains, all of which reflect heavy industry, which is what I'm really into and what I'm looking to recreate. As I said back at the start, this is the first in a series of videos on construction layout. Obviously we're a long way from being finished yet, and it's going to take a while to get there, but it should be an interesting journey. Therefore, please do subscribe to the channel to make sure you see all future videos. Be a shame to miss out. And in the next video, we'll be looking at the construction of the baseboards. But until then, hope you've enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.